Good morning, everybody. My name is Mado, M-A-D-O, and I'm here today to talk to you about this little booklet that I wrote with Guy. It's a booklet called Authority, and it's booklet number 2 of a series called the Personocratia series. And the aim of the little series is to show people what is going on in the world right now, what type of evolution we are going through, so that people can understand how to change their life and become what they were meant to become. Let me explain. So this booklet, actually, is a booklet that's going to talk about the soul. And if you see what the title of the conference today is, the conference is Who is Calling? Ego or Soul? Because most of us now are aware that we have a little internal voice. And most of the time that internal voice we take for, we can call it intuition, we could call it my little angel or my personal little devil, but every time it's an internal voice that is a part of me, and it tells me all kinds of things, and I never know, should I listen to it or not? All right, well, let's first of all come back to who human beings are. Human beings are, well, it tells you with the word, human beings. Human comes from humus. It means earth, soil, the basic matter that makes up all of the universe. Basic matter. And then human being, being is the spirit. So basically, if you look at this little drawing here, the lowest vibration of matter with the highest vibration of spirit. On this thing here, the lowest vibration of matter with the highest vibration of spirit. This is who we are, from the lowest and everything in between all the way to the highest vibrations. All right, so what's going on right now? Right now, human beings have been living in a world of illusion, which looks pretty much like a fishbowl. Basically, human beings take themselves to be fish. So what do? Well, we go around one way all week long, going to work, taking the subway, coming back home, taking care of the kids, eating, and having a little bit of fun in the bed, and then going to sleep and starting back. What do we do on the weekend or on the holidays? We say, oh, life is boring. Let's try the other way around. We turn around and we start going the other way. Okay? So basically, we're stuck in a fishbowl. Now, what's special about the fishbowl? The fishbowl is filled with water. This water represents fear. My life is filled with fear. Everything I do from morning to evening is always based on fear. So, little fish that I am, every time I eat, I'm scared of dying of hunger. Every time I make babies, I'm scared of the species going to extinction. Every time I go to work in the morning with a work I don't like, I'm doing it because I'm scared of lacking. Everything I do in my life is always based on fear. What's happening now? In the past few decades, we've noticed, as we become conscious of what's going on, we have noticed that little fish, that the water is getting scarce. And all the 7 billion fish in the fishbowl have been accumulating all kinds of shit and dead bodies at the bottom. And right now, actually, I'm not in nice, clean water. I'm in a fishbowl where the water is filthy, it's lacking, and there's a whole bunch of horrible mess at the bottom. And I'm barely able to see anymore, and I'm barely able to breathe anymore. Now, why is it like that? Well, the idea of humanity is that humanity is a passageway, a transition period between animality and, which is right here, animality and a divine life or a eidesic life in matter. And in order for me to be able to change from one species to the next, which is something we talked about in the other booklet and another video, in order for me to change from one to the other, I have to be able to start behaving differently. Basically, it means that the fish here has to be able to, once it gets so filled with, it has a hard time breathing, it's covered in filth, and it wants to come out. When the fish is suffering enough, that suffering becomes the diving board that is needed for me to jump out of the fishbowl. All right. Now, before we start explaining how to do this, the first thing we have to understand is what's the difference between the soul and a new person that we're going to mention that is called the ego. Okay? We're going to talk about soul and ego to understand when I hear a voice inside of me, how can I tell who is talking? Is it the soul or is it the ego? All right, so let's talk about the ego. What's the ego? Ego is a false soul that I've invented to be able to survive in that fishbowl until I'm able to jump out. That ego is there to control the three parts of my body. The basic part, which everybody sees, is the physical part. So my ego is there to help me deal with my physical body. It tells me, for example, watch out, you don't look so good today, and maybe you're not going to be able to be liked by other person because your hair is a little bit crooked. So fix your hair, check in the mirror. So it tells me to watch my body. It tells me, oh, maybe you should eat vitamin C because it's going to keep your body healthy. Maybe you should put that little cream in your face because your wrinkles will go away. So it takes care of my physical body. The ego also does something else. It takes care of my emotional body, my vital body, my pranic body. Okay? So the ego is there to tell me which emotions are good and which are bad, which ones I should consider enjoyable, which ones I should put down. For example, if my ego is telling me, you should give flowers to your mother for St. Valentine's, maybe she'll like it. Or maybe for Mother's Day, that would be better. So if my ego tells me if you give flowers to your mother for Mother's Day, she'll feel good and then you can feel good at being a good daughter. Well, if I do that, I will feel expanded. My emotions will be one of what I call love. Okay? It'll be an emotion of satisfaction, of faithfulness, whatever else. It can also tell me, oh my God, your mother didn't like your flowers. She said that she hated petunias. And this will make me feel crunch. So my ego will say, oh, you see your emotion of crunch, your emotion of being unsatisfied or being angry. That type of emotion is something you don't want. So it's actually watching and controlling my emotional body all the time. It's also controlling the way I think. So it tells me what are good things to do or what are good things to think about, what is good and what is bad. Okay? It tells me you should follow religious laws, you should follow political or legal laws or justicial laws. You should make sure to do everything that is correct morally or ethically correct. So it always takes care of the way I think. So my ego is the big king of my physical, emotional, and mental body. That's his job. Why? Because his idea is that I should make that body survive and the whole species survive until a critical mass of human beings are able to jump out of the fishbowl. Okay? And as we've seen in other booklets, or as we've seen in other videos, my ego is there to make sure that I can endure in here as long as possible so that eventually a critical mass of us is going to have the courage to jump to the other side. All right, so this is the ego. Now, who is the soul? The soul is, you see, I don't even take anything. I don't need any stuffed animals for the soul because my soul is inside my body and it's everywhere in the universe, but it is the only part of the spirit that is individualized into a being. All right, let's take this. Spirit here has been having a lot of fun for a long time, but the experiment we're going through right now is an experiment of individualization. What does that mean? It means that two things are actually indivisible. They're actually one thing. The duality means the spirit in me that created my body, the creature, the creatrix, and the creature, the body itself, are actually one thing. The only difference between the spirit in me and the body itself is that the spirit has been lowering its vibrations to create matter, to create my body. So I am both the lowest matter, densest matter inside my body, all the way to the highest matter, okay? Or the highest spirit, sorry. Now, what is the difference between spirit and soul? Spirit is everywhere. There is one, okay? In the Personocratic books, in Personocratia, we call this God or this supreme being Idessa. All right, so what is the difference between Idessa, which is the whole spirit, and the soul? The only difference is that the soul is an individualized version of Idessa, which means that I can still feel that I'm connected to everything in the spirit world, but I'm also an individualized spirit that actually takes care and worries about this body. Okay? All right, so this is my soul. What's the difference now between the soul and the ego? Well, the ego is there to make my body survive the longest it can. My soul is there to make sure that the soul itself evolves and that my body, my physical, emotional, and mental body, evolve with the soul. So her aim, her sole aim, is the evolution of matter and of herself. What is his aim? His aim, and notice that I'm talking masculine here. His aim, as opposed to the soul's aim, and I said she, or I call the soul feminine. There's a reason for this. So his aim is to make sure that my body survives as long as possible until I'm ready to listen to my soul. Okay. All right, I just mentioned a minute ago that I was calling this masculine, the ego and the body, the matter itself is called masculine, and because it is basically what we say in spirituality in general, and it is also something that we think is important here, is that everything that is spiritual, the being, Idessa, the soul, is the feminine principle, the creative principle, which comes first. And the created, or the creature, is masculine principle, and it comes after. It's not more or less important. It's just a question of order, from the feminine, the spirit, the creatrix principle, to matter, to the masculine principle, to the materialization of the spirit. Okay, so next thing. You'll notice I have two stuffed animals here. What's interesting is that the ego is not only one voice in me. The ego is several voices in me. We've seen a minute ago that the ego here takes care of my physical body, my emotional body, and my mental body. So he may have three voices saying three different things. What's interesting too is that this little fellow here is also my ego, but it is a more spiritualized ego. It's been reading the Course in Miracles. It's been listening to Oprah Winfrey and Eckhart Tolle on the internet. It's been doing all kinds of stuff. It's been doing meditation, eating raw vegetables. It's a pacifist too. It's been signing petitions, going across the world to make sure that nuclear bombs and vaccinations are not going to be happening. It is a more evolved ego. So I gave it a name. I called it Egoul, as opposed to this guy, and I call this guy Egoliath. Okay? So these two guys are in me. They're actually my ego with several personalities. Now remember, this guy, Egoul, he loves to take care of the three parts of my body too. He's the one telling me, oh boy, your body is made of more subtle matter and it can start healing other people. You can do Reiki and give people energy to heal their body. It can also tell me to have more evolved emotions. Okay? And it can also tell me to have more evolved thoughts. So you see, it's the same guy, but he's just having a different kind of language for more New Age people, or people that are more spiritually minded. But it is still an ego. The problem is, if I'm listening to this guy all the time, and I think Egooliath is the one that's worrying about all the basic stuff in life. But I have this other voice in me that tells me to do very nice things, and it's very elevated, and I can feel the difference in my body. And you know what happens? I think this is my soul, and this is my ego. And I'm mistaken again, because as long as I'm caught in the world of duality in the fishbowl, I'm caught in a world of lies. And the lies of my ego, I take to be my soul. So as you see, today we have a very special job to do. We have to tell the difference between the several voices of the ego and my soul's voice, the true voice inside of me that I cannot use any stuffed animal to represent, because it is totally immortal, omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowledgeable. It is the epitome of what a human being can be. And no stuffed animal can never, ever represent it. Okay, so here we go. My two fellows here are in my body, and I have to learn how to discern between the voice of my ego and the several voices of my ego and the voice of my single soul. Now let's go this way. All right. The most important tool to discern between ego and soul is what Guy and myself have called a philometer. How do I know if I'm listening to the ego? Well, it's pretty simple. The ego is always scared. He lives in fear, and all his decisions are based on fear. Remember, I live in a fishbowl of water, and this water represents fear. I live in fear. I bathe in fear. I breathe fear all my life. Now, if I am in fear, I'm in the ego. How can I tell if I'm scared or not? Well, the philometer will tell me. Inside of me, this represents my heart right now. People say, oh, I have to get out of the mental. I have to get out of my mind and go into my heart. This is where my soul is. It connects me to my soul. Well, that is true somewhere, maybe deep, deep under my heart, there is a soul. The problem is there's a whole bunch of other stuff over it. And that stuff is called fear. So, what happens? If my heart, if my emotional body is at zero, which means I have no expansions, I don't feel wow, and I have no contractions, I don't feel crunch. If I'm totally at zero, then I can reach my soul. Then I have an entranceway to the world of pure love, which is where the soul is. But if I am in any type of fear, I will be either in expansion or in contraction. Now the problem is most of us have taken expansions for the soul. Most people think if I feel good, well, I must be doing something right because my soul is telling me feeling good is what it's all about. Well, I can feel good when I'm beating someone up. I can feel good when I'm taking 5 glasses of beer, for example, and it doesn't mean it's good or bad to take beer, but it surely doesn't bring me close to my soul. And the aim today is to decide how can I really listen to my soul's voice and be sure that it is my soul's voice. So the number one is to get out my philometer, which is right there in the middle of my body, and to see, now, how do I feel? I close my eyes and I go, do I feel expansion? No, I'm not excited about anything. I'm not in full joy. Okay? I'm not excited. Am I unhappy? Am I angry? Am I crunched somewhere? No. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm feeling pretty equal. Okay, what happens if I'm not? What happens if I feel elated? Well, it might be because someone told me, oh, Mado, today your hair looks so good. What's your hairdresser's number? Well, that makes me feel good. Why? Because I'm scared of not being liked by other people. And the fear is under my joy. So basically, I'm happy because I don't feel as fearful as usual. because I'm always scared that people won't like me all the time, and I can't see this fear. I can only see it when something happens to me and it makes me go up in expansion or down in contraction. Okay. What happens if someone tells me, oh, Mado, your hair looks really awful today. Give me your hairdresser's number, I'll make sure not to go there. Now that's going to make me go down, contract my body. And if you think about the body itself, the body is like it's 50 billion cells, but each cell will react the same way. If I feel elated, my cells will start expanding. And if I feel crunch, if I feel contracted, angry, sad, my cells will actually contract. You can see this in a microscope. If you, for example, you have a cell and you give it some sugar and the cell expands to be able to absorb the sugar, it's expanding. The cell is happy. And if you poke it, the cell will contract because it's unhappy, it's scared. Okay? Because cells and everything that's living lives in fear of dying all the time. So the filometer will tell me right away if I'm in ego or soul. I can never be connected to my soul if I'm elated or if I'm contracted. I can only be connected to my soul if I am feeling neutral. It doesn't mean I have to feel bored. It's just because the soul is pure joy and pure love. But I won't feel expanded, elated, excited, and I won't feel contracted. Okay? All right. Second thing. I want to call my soul. So here I go. I pick up the phone and I call my soul. Deet, 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 deet. How do I know if I'm actually getting my soul at the end? Well, the first thing to know is that as soon as you call, this guy runs like mad and he picks up the phone. Okay? So if you're calling, 99% of the time it will be the ego. If it sounds like a big voice, it'll be this guy. If it sounds like a cute little voice, a saint voice, it's probably going to be this guy. Okay? But 99% of the time it will be the ego. How do I make sure that when I call, the soul will answer? Well, there are a few tricks that Guy has developed with the years. Number one is first I have to come back to myself. S-O-I in French, soi, means self. So if I come back to myself means I have to silence my mind, number one. I have to tell my voice inside between my two ears to shut up. Okay? Silence the mind. Then, we've just talked about it with the filometer, then I have to make sure my emotions are at zero. So it's zero emotions. So as soon as I feel that I'm elated or I'm excited or contracted, I just calm down. I shut the ideas or anything that comes between my two ears, and then I come back and I just calm down. Make sure my emotions come back to neutral. And then I noticed often that my body is shaking inside. When I'm thinking and when I'm all excited or all angry, I don't notice this, but my body is always in fear. It is always shaking a little bit. My 50 billion cells are always waiting just in case something is going to happen. So the idea is to immobilize and calm the body. Once this is done, then I'm in business. Then I can pick up the phone at that moment. I've got to do this before I pick up the phone. Silence the mind, zero emotions, immobile body, and then I pick up the phone and I call. What do? Well, I have to call the soul. Hi, soul, how's it going? Soul will answer, fine, because she's always fine. And then I have to tell her, oh, soul, I'd like you to come to my house today. So I authorize her to come. And when she knocks on the door, I welcome my soul. I say, come in, soul. And some of you will say, yeah. Well, of course, if you call the soul, you're going to tell her to come in. For sure, you just called her. Well, most people don't. They call the soul, and once the soul comes to their door and says, I'm ready to come. I've been so eager to meet you. Well, they don't authorize her to come in because they know somewhere, and this guy knows, this one too, they both know that if the soul comes in, they are gone. Because the soul's aim is to make sure that these guys, now that I'm ready to listen to my soul, finally, after all these numerous thousands of incarnations, I'm finally ready to really listen to the real soul, not this guy, the real one. If I'm ready, they know that they're going, because their job was a temporary job. It was to help me until I was ready to listen to the soul. So the first thing they want me to do is they want me not to authorize the soul to come. So often what people do is they call the soul and they just keep the door shut. All right, third thing, I surrender, which is the biggest one. I surrender to the soul's decisions or the soul's propositions. If the soul comes in and tells me, you know, that job you hate, it's time you lose. It's time you quit. I'm scared of quitting my job. I'm scared of lack. I might not have any food. Maybe my husband will leave me because I won't bring half of the rent in. Maybe my children won't have any food to eat, or not enough, or maybe they won't be able to go to the fancy schools I wanted them to go to. So I'm scared, but if I listen to my soul, I surrender to what she's going to ask me to do. Okay? So this is what happens during a call to my soul. I call, I authorize her to come in, and then I surrender to what she's going to tell me, or what she's going to propose to me. Okay, what's coming next? We're going to talk about this guy now. Egoul. He's been working hard in the past few years. This guy has been so cool lately. He's been inventing all kinds of new religions. Theosophy, anthroposophy, Buddhism is getting more fashionable, and the Buddhism has been completely transformed for a New Age clientele. You have all kinds of fancy sects coming out. You have all kinds of nice books coming out and interviews on the television. You have internet sites where you can go visit and listen to videos on all kinds of gurus that tell you beautiful things. And this guy just loves it. He eats it all up, gobbles it up. Now, remember, it's hard to tell the difference between my soul and this kid. So how do I know? How do I know that what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, what I'm looking at on the internet corresponds to what my soul really wants? And remember, my soul is not your soul. My soul is my soul. Your soul is your soul. My soul tells me all kinds of weird stuff. Your soul tells you different stuff. So I'm not telling you to do what my soul tells me to do. You should do what your soul tells you to do. The problem is you have to tell the difference here. So, how do we do? First of all, if a guru or if a person or a book tells you that you are going to die, so you have no choice. You know, for example, the Tibetan books of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Okay? If they talk about death, you know it is not what your soul wants you to hear, because your soul is immortal. And the aim now is for you to become for your body to become as vibrant and as full of all the powers of Idessa as your soul is. So death is, no, you're an immortal body. All right, duality. If in the books you're reading or the information you're having, there's duality between right and wrong, you should always do this, you should never do that. Okay? Women do this and men do that. Children do this and old people do that. If there's a classification on good things to do and bad things to do, then you're not listening to what your soul is telling you. You're going to be listening to the duality or the laws that have been set up for you. Then you know that you're in the fishbowl. If there's a hierarchy, if there's a guru and sub-gurus, okay, for example, let's take the Dalai Lama as a good example. There's the Dalai Lama, there are higher lamas and lower lamas and smaller lamas, and then the Buddhists, and then the non-Buddhists. So you see there's a hierarchy. And everybody is trying to control the person under them. And everybody is being controlled by the person over them. Okay? So if you're in hierarchy, you're in the fishbowl. If there's reproduction, if you say, well, the Native Americans did it that way and they were happy, so we'll do the same. Okay? Reproduction can take two ways. You can reproduce behaviors that people had before, or you can also reproduce your own body. Okay? Sex comes under reproduction too. If a guru or any type of teaching is telling you you should have children, tantric sex is good, it's going to bring you higher in vibrations, then you know that you're in the fishbowl, because you're an immortal body and you're an immortal soul, and in an immortal body you do not need to reproduce. You do not need children anymore. So to get out of the sexual world is to get out of the fishbowl. Are you thinking about the exterior all the time? Are you looking at what other people outside of you are saying? Politicians, judges, artists on television. As long as you're looking for outside answers, you're not looking for your internal answers. And your soul is there, and the voice is there for you to know at all times what to do. If the person, the guru, the idea is pushed by the media, let's take, for example, Harry Potter, Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons, etc., Céline Dion, all kinds of artists, all kinds of books and movies that are pushed by the media. The media is always backed by big money, which means by big egos. And you know, behind any person that's pushed in the media, there's a big ego somewhere that is trying to control. And finally, collaboration. For example, if you're going on an internet site, there's this cool book and cool DVD that talks about spirituality, but you have to pay with MasterCard or PayPal, and you find out that the guru has been has bank accounts, he's been paying his income tax regularly, and he's collaborating with the government. For example, if a guru is saying, well, you do Reiki for a while to people, but if you see they're getting sicker, make sure that you tell them to go to the doctor. Don't take a chance. If he's collaborating with the medical system, he is in a fishbowl. All right. We are, actually, I'm going to go right here. We are in a very tough time right now. In general, our whole society is going through a series of crises. Yeah, economic crisis, a legal crisis, a political crisis, a health crisis. We're talking a lot about the pandemic, about massive and even compulsory vaccination. We're talking about FEMA camps. We're talking about guillotines. We're talking about mass graves. I mean, if you go on the internet and you surf right now, it's you don't even need to go. You don't need to go see horror movies. It's right there, and it's actually real news. It's not it's not just movies. So we're in a crisis or series of crises that are leading us towards what we call an evolutionary crisis. The crisis is, it's time for us to get out of the fishbowl. Okay? The problem is, it's very tempting for this guy and these two guys. Okay? It's very tempting for these guys to say, my God, I'm losing control of this body. What am I going to do? Well, the ego would rather have us commit suicide than change. So what I want to talk about now before we stop is to talk about suicide. A lot of us have come in this world and we've not even decided to incarnate. We have left the door open, and as soon as we don't like life, we're out. We're getting out by playing video games, watching movies, taking alcohol, sex, drugs, whatever. We're always trying to get out all the time. We're not incarnating. We're not ready to be here and do what we have to do. And a lot of us have not closed the other door, the door to death and suicide. And as soon as things start getting rough, we're ready to pull the trigger. And the trigger can be pulled in several ways. It can be pulled with a gun, or by jumping into cold water from a bridge. It can also come from cancer or all kinds of other diseases that are long-term deaths. It can come from refusing to do what our soul is telling us to do, which means the body eventually dies of fear and exhaustion. So a lot of us have chosen suicide. And we've been choosing suicide for hundreds and thousands of lives. Aren't you tired of that? Don't you just feel that somehow, somewhere, there has to be once in your life, in your many lives, where you're going to say, this time I'm not going to commit suicide. This time I'm going to stay there, and when time comes, I will jump out of fear. And when I jump out of fear, I am totally connected with my soul at all times. And the last thing the soul wants, the last thing it wants is for the body to die. The part of me that wants to have the body die is this guy. He doesn't want to lose control. He's even ready to kill the body before he loses control. Now the time is for us to say, no more. I'm staying here and I will go on listening to my soul until I'm finally out. I will not quit. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that you can take the chance to buy the book, find it, borrow it, so that you have more of the information I've been giving today. Thank you very much. Et voilà.